Well, I'm just going to go down the line so everybody knows who we are, and then we'll get started on the session. I'm Christine Campbell. I'm the Policy Director at the Center on Reinventing Public Education at the University of Washington.
Thank you.
Oh, can you? There.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Marlene Ibsen, President of Travelers Foundation.
Reggie Mayo, Superintendent, New Haven.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Janice Brown, the Executive Director of the Kalamazoo Promise in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Good morning, Corey Bowman, University of Pennsylvania, and our University Assisted Community Schools National Network.
Good morning, Rayanne Knopf, Executive Director of the Connecticut Council for Education Reform.
Great. So this is a panel about partnerships in portfolio districts. And just to give you some connection, SERPI, as we're called, has been connected with Hartford Public Schools for about 7 years. Hartford is part of our portfolio school district network, which has about 40 other urban districts involved in it. And we've been able to engage deeply with Hartford on several different occasions over the years, and most recently working on this report that was mentioned this morning. But it's really a great two-way street. We learn so much from Hartford and from our relationship with the folks who are leading this work and the educators in the schools. And this work energizes and really allows us to come up with new ideas for the rest of the districts in the country. So it's a great partnership for us. But this morning we're going to talk about external partners in portfolio districts, and I'm really very pleased to be part of this panel of such smart, creative, and committed people. Hartford Public Schools has been implementing this portfolio strategy for about 7 years. And it's a family-centered strategy, and the idea is that if you allow families to choose from great options, that really removes the barriers for kids and their success. And in a nutshell, the portfolio strategy is the idea of opening more promising schools, closing or replacing chronically low-performing schools, and using data to make those sort of continuous improvement decisions. And where a traditional district might act as sort of a centralized organization that oversees a lot of similar schools, a portfolio district is a provider of a very diverse set of schools. And the idea there is that, as I said, that families can then choose from among these different schools for the best fit for their kids. The strategy is open to new ideas and using new technologies. And the idea is that at the end of the day, that a city can say that this is actually the very best we can give our kids. But the portfolio strategy grew out of a mindset that districts can't and shouldn't go it alone, that every city has a lot to offer, and that by tapping into these assets, there's much more richness that can help students on their path to career and college. So I thought I'd frame this session on partnerships in portfolio districts in sort of 4 ways that I see these partnerships taking place. Some are the outside of school experiences, so these might be internships or tuition scholarships, that sort of thing. Some are in school or school related, so that might be providing curriculum or training. There's back office or central office supports like payroll and benefits or maintenance. These are things that you might contract with for either expertise or cost savings. And then lastly, sustainability, which I think we've talked a bit about today. There's the community leadership work. So much of the work that's going on in this room fits that bill, really supporting and guiding and pushing the district in a direction forward. There's state legislation, which we've heard about this morning, that supports districts in the hard work so that they're not coming up against barriers that are keeping them from doing this work. And then there's the research to get at the questions of what's working and what needs to be improved. And we've seen that with the partnership with local colleges and universities here, and then with national groups like mine. So that's broadly speaking. I thought maybe we'd dig into some of the work that's going on. And Marlene, maybe you can talk a little bit about your experience working with Hartford Public Schools and what's made that an experience you want to continue. Here, I'll get this.
Thank you. I think for us at Travelers, we've We went into our partnership with Hartford Public Schools with eyes pretty wide open. Having been a company largely based in Hartford for a very long time, we understood that there were a lot of challenges within the district, a lot of challenges within the city, and we had actually gotten to a point where we were not doing much partnership or funding directly with the district because over time we were really struggling to understand what impact that was having. We were working a lot more with nonprofit organizations around students in the city, but not so much in the schools. And when Superintendent Adamowski came in, and we understood that he and the Board of Ed had a very clear plan that made sense to us as a business, we decided that it was time. It was time to get back in and understand that it was so important for the city, for the students, for the families, for our future workforce needs to get behind this. As a company and a corporate funder, we look at business plans all the time, and it was a plan that made sense to us because it wasn't promising miracles. We knew it was a long-term plan with a long-term vision, and we're an insurance company. We look at risk all the time. We think about risk all the time, and we don't make bets without a whole lot of information. And so what we've enjoyed over time is that while things have not always been perfect, we went into this on a kind of open situation where we said we're going to give this a try. We're going to look at the elements of the plan. We want to understand where your key levers are, that we can bring our resources, both financial and our human resources, to help make those changes. And as an organization and a contemporary corporation that goes through change on a regular basis, we knew that wasn't going to be easy. So I think understanding that improvement and change takes time, and it is hard, has been said here, and knowing that the district knew that and had a thoughtful plan and knew that there were going to be challenges, having that open, honest conversation from the beginning has set the basis for an ongoing relationship.
And just generally speaking, what do you look for in terms of a good fit or a good partnership? What are the kinds of deliverables or proof or evidence are you looking for as you move forward?
Well, data. Again, we're very analytical. Most businesses are. We like to understand that things are rooted in qualitative and quantitative analysis over time. We look for that. But again, I think getting back to so much in life is about relationships and having trusting relationships. And I think knowing that we were building that relationship, that we were having frank discussions, when we look for partners even beyond the school district, when we're looking for other nonprofit organizations or even other companies to partner with in the community, we often will build on existing relationships if that's possible and makes sense. We really try to ensure a safe environment for frank discussion. We keep ongoing open communication, so we're engaging all the partners regularly so that it's not sort of once a year you pop in, you get the overview, and then you're gone, and then you're surprised a year later when things have not gone the way you expected them to go. And then as a company, we were pretty clear about what we wanted to see and what goals we wanted to achieve going into any kind of project and with the partnership with Hartford, and then making sure that we have joint goals and objectives with any partners we're engaging in from the beginning. They may change over time, but that will be a collaborative process. If you're not clear up front about what you're both trying to achieve or what multiple parties are trying to achieve, you might turn back in a few years and wonder what happened. So I'd say those are sort of the key elements we look for.
Oh, good, just in time. So let's switch gears from the sort of broad idea of partnerships to something more concrete. And Dr. Kishimoto, if you could tell us a little bit about a partnership example in Hartford that really gets at the idea of using the sort of best people and resources available in the city. Maybe describe for us a current partnership that's going on.
Right, so I guess I literally came in just in time. I think I will use the partnership example of the person sitting to my left because it's the longest running partnership and has served as an example of the work that others have then come and continue to work with us on based on. The Travelers Foundation was one of the early partners who really understood the concept of a portfolio design and a theme-based model that engages students. And they, key to the partnership, they have a vice president who serves on the School Governance Council and chairs that School Governance Council. They have worked with us in terms of having other members of their organization in the school, providing tutoring and support to students. They have worked directly and endlessly with the principal around just continuing to support him and his ideas in terms of innovating in that school on behalf of what students should be doing and what kind of access they should be having to businesses in Hartford and understanding their role in contributing back to the city and leading the work in terms of future leaders in the city and in business as well. And so I think it serves as and has served as a great model for what has then grown out of that for not only our high schools but also various school designs that we have even at our elementary and middle school level now.
Thank you. Moving down the line here, a different kind of partnership that is going on both in Hartford and in other cities across America is this one of Promise. So I'd love to hear more from Kalamazoo about the Kalamazoo Promise and what you've learned over the years since this has been going on since 2005. Maybe some surprising outcomes that have come out over the years.
Did you say you had all day?
Oh, I don't know if you're on. Can you check your mic? It's this. Yeah, okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Well, in its very simplest terms, the Kalamazoo Promise is a scholarship for all students that attend Kalamazoo Public Schools. And they have to be in Kalamazoo Public Schools for at least 4 years. If they've been with us for 12 years or 13 years, they are 100% funded. So every student in Kalamazoo Public Schools, and there are currently over 13,000, are eligible and are Promise Scholars. To date, we've spent over $44 million on scholarships for our youth, and they go everywhere in the state of Michigan, from the community college to the University of Michigan and Michigan State University. We have learned so much about what it means to be a community that has developed a pre-K through grade 16 public school system. One of the smartest things we did from the beginning was decide that our students had 10 years to complete their degree. So we fund them through their college for 10 years because we know that life is very different for them than it was for us. And we have constantly addressing and encouraging our students to try again to complete their college degrees. So that was a huge learning for us and probably one of the best things we ever did. Secondly, one of the mistakes we made was, I would venture to guess that just about everyone in this room has a pretty traditional degree, 4-year degree, master's degree, doctorate degree in education, political science, economics, business administration, etc. The kinds of degrees and the kinds of training that our young people require today are very, very different than when we went to school. At the community college level in Michigan, there are over 80 opportunities for technology, manufacturing, healthcare, and other fields that are very, very strong middle class and family dependent degrees, which create a nice core middle class family. One of our most successful students just graduated from wind turbine school, which of course did not exist when we were in school. I'd venture to say any of us, even though there's a lot of people here younger than I am. So we're constantly thinking about the kinds of degrees and the kinds of certificates and the kinds of training our young people need. We just recently, this year, have come to an agreement with the United Brotherhood of Electricians. We will be paying our first out-of-university, out-of-college certification program with an electrical apprenticeship for our students. And what happens with them, if they're really in dire straits and need a job, they start to work immediately after high school. They have full benefits. They have a retirement program. They get a raise every year. And they are with a master electrician for 5 years. So we're going to try that. So this is something we never thought we would be trying as we invented the Kalamazoo Promise. Another thing that I think we've learned that has been so important to us is that the Kalamazoo Promise in Kalamazoo, Michigan is established to go on in perpetuity. The young adults that are graduating from college now can literally have their children and their children's children, etc., take advantage of the Kalamazoo Promise if they graduate from Kalamazoo Public Schools. Final thing that I think we have learned is that this is not education-centric. This whole movement that we are involved with in the greater community of Kalamazoo is a movement that creates a complete cultural shift in our community. And every person that I meet on the streets, in buildings, day to day, I can ask the question, what are you doing? What is your organization? What is your institution doing to make good on the Kalamazoo Promise? And I could literally go on for an hour, but there's too many people up here. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we've seen just here on this panel some really good examples of partnerships that are going on in different cities. Corey, I wonder if you might tell us about your work at a higher ed institution about brokering these kinds of relationships between K-12, higher ed, community organizations, and what you've learned about what works and what doesn't work in these partnerships.
Sure. So good morning. The superintendent's report and the UConn report talked about the dynamic interconnection between education, health, and community health. And so our work has been saying, given that dynamic interconnection, let's actually connect them. And what does that mean? It means that we know that partnerships matter, that a lot can be done around teaching and learning and curriculum and school organization by districts alone, but that is not sufficient. And that the work needs to help build comprehensive, multi-sided solutions and approaches to this problem. So we work with, the kids had it right this morning, human stuff matters. This is a great piece. So we work with the anchor institutions in our area. The issue is not that there are not jobs in West Philadelphia. The issue is that our West Philadelphia students are not connected and not getting those jobs. The issue is not that the local institutions don't have a significant amount of spend, but the question is what percentage of that spend is going to local minority West Philadelphia-owned businesses? And how do we direct those employment and purchasing, and in many cases real estate connections, to directly support our K-16 partnerships? Now, while we work with for-profits and other institutions, the focus of our Netter Center is largely around the eds and the meds and the nonprofits. And so while we can talk about a lot of our employment activities, we currently have programs where we have high school students that are in a pipeline program where we try to get them junior college credits, Community College of Philadelphia in junior and senior year. When they graduate, we pay them 40 hours a week to work 20 hours and to complete their associate's degree, and those students have opportunity to continue on to college or get full-time jobs with benefits. We're also in the process of employing and training their parents in new jobs in the hospital around patient navigator and other kinds of activities around all the existing jobs and IT activities. So how do we make those direct connections? But at the core of it is connecting to the core mission of the university, connecting to the core mission of teaching and learning. So our students, not in the ed school, but our students who are physics majors, biology majors, chemistry majors, are learning their discipline by teaching it in the local schools. We have this chair of the physics department at the University of Pennsylvania, goes to University City High School. He's been doing it for 10 years, and he says, my students learn better, my Penn students, by generating hands-on labs and inquiry-based activities, and then teaching it in a local school that unfortunately didn't have those kinds of things. So we currently mobilize over 1,700 students from Penn in service learning classes. We have over 60 service learning classes a year that are connected to the core teaching and learning of the school. We have over 350 federal community service, federal work study students employed in the schools, working about 10 to 15 hours a week. We have about 120 interns, about 400 volunteers, and these students work with their school partners and their community partners to help not only improve teaching and learning in the school day, but teaching and learning in the school day where students are learning about health through actual community health improvement. They're learning about employment by working directly on internships and pipeline activities where students aren't being trained to the skills of the local employers, but they're being trained in and with the local employers so that the students aren't ultimately hired based on share, they're based on the level playing field of actually having those relationships. So what we've found is that while Penn can mobilize our purchasing and can mobilize our employment and our real estate to support our schools and our communities so that our university-assisted community schools can be hubs for the community, can have those community health clinics, can have those job training activities for kids and adults, unless we connect it to the core mission of the university, teaching and learning, we're not going to have a sustainable partnership. So we try to make sure that all of our partnerships are connected to the core mission of their partners to have a sustainable maximum impact.
Great, thank you. So we've talked about several different kinds of partnerships in school and out of school, but I think one that we've heard about this morning and I'd like to know more about is this piece about sustainability. Dr. Mayo, with 21 years as leader of New Haven Schools, I think you have something to say about sustainability. Tell us how you have built these community partnerships that maybe press and prod you, but still support the work of your administration. And tell us a little bit about the benefits of sustained leadership.
Okay, thank you very much, first of all, for inviting me. And I said yes this year, okay. Let me just say that New Haven, we started our change initiative, our school reform initiative approximately 3 years ago. And I guess the greatest partner that we could have had in, well, the last 20 years anyway, that I've been superintendent has been the mayor of the city of New Haven, John DeStefano. He's been a great partner. He's certainly concerned about young people in the city of New Haven, and I was about ready to leave. I was the superintendent at the time. He became mayor, and obviously superintendents leave when you change mayorships, and he asked me to stay on, and let's get some things done for kids. And we worked together very closely for the last 20 years, and to me, if you want to talk about partnerships, talk about what has happened with the Board of Ed in the city of New Haven and providing quality education for young people in the city of New Haven. So actually about 3 years ago, I was about ready to leave the New Haven Public School System at that point, and John came in and asked me to stay another 3 years. I think we need to make some changes. I think we need to change our coat, our shoes, our socks. We need to do something different in New Haven to try to get those test scores up, to try to close that achievement gap, to do something with the dropout rate, cut it in half if we can. and prepare our kids for college by the resume, and, of course, provide some financial support for them. That's where our Promise program came in. We adopted basically what you guys did in Kalamazoo. That's the program that we took a look at and got Yale after 2 years of manipulating, kicking, scratching, to commit to $4 million after 5 years to the kids of New Haven if they met certain criteria. And of course, you had to have a B average, 40 hours of community service in high school, good behavior, and of course a 90% attendance rate. Yale has been one of our strongest partners. They've been there for years, but certainly have never done anything as substantial as to say, we'll give you $4 million. Let me just say that it's been going on for 3 years. This is the 3rd year for that. It's going to be a building process. I'm sort of disappointed, I must say, that more of our kids are not taking advantage of that. But I try to get them to lower that to 2.5, the grade point average, and of course we're still working on Yale for that, and are also looking at other universities at this particular time, Southern, Eastern, and the rest of those universities, to give scholarships to our young people that are between 2.5 and 2.9. Yale looked at it and thought it would cost too much money if they did that. But they're probably one of the greatest partners that we've had. We've formed partnerships because that's part of the strategy of those 3 goals that I talked to you about a few seconds ago. Part of that strategy is to organize the entire community around young people. We have tried to organize things in New Haven, getting everybody involved in situations before. Never have we had the kind of participation that we've had in the last 3 years because of the new reform initiatives that we've done. The other thing is, and it's certainly something that we looked at the charter schools and said, well, let's stop fighting them. Let's try to learn a few things from them. One of the things that they do well is raise money. We never go out and raise money. We go out and raise money now. They have a person who is hired just to raise dollar bills for the public school system. Reggie Mayo has a person now that goes out and raises money for. Let's learn from these guys. Let's not fight them all the time. So that was one thing that we had to learn. And that was that struggle. I mean, the business community was pretty much on the charter side. So there was a little strain between the mayor and myself against the business community. Well, we set them all in a room, gave them some cookies. Let's put all of this to the side. We need your help. We need your help. And of course, we've raised significant dollars over the last year for our school change initiative, and that piece has been good. We ask, and we found that, you know what, maybe people don't do things for us because we don't ask, Reggie Mayor, and that's what the mayor said to me. We asked United Way to take over our wraparound services. You guys run it. You guys own it. Take ownership of it and run it. And obviously they do. They go out and raise money for after-school programs, getting parents involved in schools, you name it. And they do it on a portfolio basis. What does this school need to wrap around these kids that will help them to succeed at individual schools? So we have many, many partnerships. We're working on this whole mental health piece at this minute, trying to get as many of those agencies involved to help our kids with the social, emotional, and health issues that they have. I'm going to stop because I could go on, okay?
So lastly, down on the end, Rayanne, who's the Executive Director of the Connecticut Council on Education Reform. Rayanne has a unique perspective of being able to look across the state and sort of monitor state trends and then look more closely at individual districts. Rayanne, what are some of the big external challenges that are facing Hartford, and then maybe some internal ones as well?
Sure. Thank you, Christine, and thank you for having me. I think there are a couple of challenges that Hartford is facing that have been touched on earlier in the discussion. And I think one of the biggest challenges is really attracting more great talent to the Hartford School District. And clearly some forward-thinking strategies are in place and are moving forward. But we know what a challenge it is to really attract people to work in schools in our cities and in our urban centers, particularly those schools that really are experiencing high rates of poverty, a lot of community challenges, and academic challenges, resource challenges as well. One of the things that I think that is important in order to help the Hartford School District and New Haven and others around the state is really taking a closer look at our policies related to certification and recruitment and talent development in the state. They're really designed in sort of a protectionist way, which is to really incentivize people within the state of Connecticut to become teachers and principals. But when we have a situation where we don't have enough people who are talented in those areas to come and fill the positions in our schools and our urban centers, we really need some flexibility for districts like Hartford to be able to pursue those things. And so I think that is one of the greatest challenges. I think the other challenge that was touched on in the reports and also in the presentations was Hartford has done a great job of applying a portfolio district model and moving forward some really innovative school redesign efforts. But what the data is showing is that there are still these persistent problems in achievement in mathematics and literacy, and maybe to a greater degree in mathematics, according to your own reporting. And that's really, that's a harder problem to fix, I think. From a personal standpoint, I know what it takes to turn around a school and redesign a school. To make those kinds of pervasive changes all the way across the system is really a big challenge for the leadership in the district, and implementing things like higher, deeper standards through the Common Core, really personalizing the learning environment and making sure that every child has access to high quality instruction in both mathematics and literacy from a very early age is going to be very important in terms of increasing that college-going spirit that we're all talking about with Promise programs, and really bringing community ownership to those efforts, I think, as well. And so when we think about how that happens, certainly Hartford has been blessed with some grants recently to help them bring more technology in to help amplify the efforts of teachers and principals in reaching the needs of every child in their schools. But I think just recognizing how difficult it is to implement consistent, high-quality practices across schools, across the entire district, for every child in the school is something that the Hartford community and the whole state really needs to be aware of. We have many school districts in our state who are facing similar challenges. And I think one of the keys to being successful in that is sustaining really strong leadership who understand the nuances of Hartford. I loved what I heard earlier, the discussions about how children need to see themselves in the institutions of their community. They need to be able to see themselves in the jobs and the businesses that operate in their community in order to want to strive for those things as a child themselves. So I think that is one of the biggest things that we're facing right now is how does Hartford go to the next level? And clearly Dr. Kishimoto and her staff are embracing that and very excited about taking on that challenge and being very courageous in that work. And so I think as that happens, we need to think about how do we help them have more partners outside the district that help them in accomplishing these goals.
Great. Well, thank you. I'm going to turn it over now to the group. Any burning questions? I think there'll be microphones being passed around. Yes. And if you could just say your name and your affiliation just for the panel so they know who you are. Anyone wondering anything?
I'd like to reemphasize what Ray Ann said about our leadership in our schools. I had the opportunity to work as the accrediting chair of Achievement First Amistad High School last fall, and I know they're working now in Hartford. And I think one of the things that impressed me most was they're a leadership organization where they truly had a principal who was an instructional leader, and that's all he did all day long. And the other person took care of everything else, all the management, all the nuts and bolts. And When that happens, all of the focus is on teaching and learning. So I think that model that Achievement First has designed is one that we should look at very, very carefully from a management standpoint and an instructional leadership standpoint. The principals are totally involved in teaching and learning all day. The teachers are totally involved in teaching and learning all day. They're teaching, they're being coached, and they are meeting constantly with their coaches around teaching and learning.
Excellent.
Dr. Kishimoto, do you want to say anything about relationship with Achievement First?
We have been really pleased with what is a reciprocal relationship between Achievement First and the Hartford Public Schools. And I think we serve as a unique model of how to think about the charter district relationship in a way that's mutually beneficial, which is they bring a great model and approach to what they do, which is in fact effective and works for kids. And they're learning from us, we're learning from them, and we're at the table together in terms of talking about how do we then prepare the next level of leaders, how do we prepare the next level of teachers, how do we move this work forward. And I think that's a very different way of working than what we often hear is kind of the push and pull between various kind of governance approaches. And that's something that I'd like to see in terms of us collectively, and I think Dr. Mayo talked about this as well in terms of as he thought about what works in New Haven for that next level of work, is that as urban centers who have been doing this kind of work across kind of governance structures, really pushing that agenda much further at the policy level, at the state level, so we're not stopped or hindered by the policy.
You got a question back there?
Hi. Good morning.
Nonprofit organization in the city, and we do a great deal of work with students and young individuals. And I happen to have two teachers in my family, two children who are teachers, one in the Hartford school system. One of the things that we find with the work that we do with young children is that there's the need to develop a sense of purpose and a sense of belonging. And we've been very successful in the work that we do by working with them so that they become participants in designing their own destiny and determining their own future. And I was wondering if there's anything that is being done intentionally and actively in involving students in the decision-making process as to what their education is going to look like and what role do they have to play.
But I'll jump in, and I think Dr. Mayo can talk about it from the New Haven perspective in terms of what he's done there. There are two major, I think, initiatives related to this. One is the Hartford Promise and engaging students from the moment they enter kindergarten to talk about college with them, to talk about them owning their future, what do they want to do, and keeping that dialogue going in a developmentally appropriate way all the way through so that they are in fact leading the charge in terms of what they want to pursue. And related to that is the 6th through 12th grade college readiness work that we're doing as well in terms of advising. You know, what's important here is that our teachers also understand that they can embed this into the curriculum and that it's matched with all of the after-school providers and all the work happening in the community in a way that's embedded throughout the city in all of our work. And we see a lot of great models in terms of matching up the work that the school system does around literacy and engaging students in terms of great literature with what the Hartford Public Libraries do and align in terms of the summer and after school programming with adults and students in a way that help them through literature to talk about themselves, their aspirations, the work that they want to do for their community. We have to continue to build our students' civic capacity and our adult civic capacity to really own and understand ways in which they can push the agenda here in the city.
If I could.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Okay. That actually is the core of our work, is to help students through the community school process learn math, science, social, language arts, learn how to become civically engaged through actual problem solving. So take, for example, the problem of lead. There's not enough money to do the lead abatement in the homes. It's an educational issue. Same thing as you can say about tobacco and asthma. So if we look at environmentally based, environmentally triggered diseases, we have our university students and our K-12 student partners working together where they are learning the science and the math, as well as all those really important soft skills, by becoming agents of change in their community. I currently have 20 nutrition and health educators that are focused on helping students change the food environment in their areas. One of the major things that we do was invented by fifth graders. They said if we change the supply of fruit and vegetables after school, would it affect consumption? That's a great research question. So we now have after-school fruit and vegetable stands at 20 different schools, and the students are learning about business by being engaged in it. But it's part of a larger activity. But the point of it is that this partnership is successful in part not only because the young people are engaged in trying to impact their community health, which impacts their educational health, but also using that to learn their core subjects. But it's also the glue that holds the partnership together. It's this collaborative real-world problem solving that attracts partnerships and keeps them focused and moving forward.
Since we've been at this since about 2006, we've learned that the work of engaging students in the community and in the schools has to be done both internally in the schools and externally in the community. And internally in Kalamazoo Public Schools, we have an event or activity at every single grade level from kindergarten through grade 12, which gets students into the mindset that they are promised scholars. For example, in first grade, every student in our school district has a library card, and we provide transportation for them to get to the library. In second grade, Rotarians from throughout the greater Kalamazoo area come into the schools and read a book about college called I Know I Can, and so on and so forth. So there's a number of activities going on for 13 years that causes anybody to go into a classroom and ask the Kalamazoo children, who's going to college? And the result will be that 100% of the students will raise their hand. Externally, I'm involved in all kinds of boards and all kinds of commissions and so on. The organization in our community that's responsible for creating the systemic approach to the transformation of our community is called the Learning Network of Greater Kalamazoo. In all of the subcommittees, the committees, etc., that we have in our community, for example, we have students on every single one of those, providing the voice that tells us as adults what they need, and it is often very different than what we think they need. So that has made a big difference in how we're planning and how we're providing services and support. I had a young woman in the other day that just had a baby that's a Kalamazoo Promise Scholar, begging her to go back to school, and she said to me, Dr. Brown, I really think that you need to know where I am right now. I guarantee you I will get my college degree, but right now I need to find some Pampers. So that's kind of the breadth and depth that we have to get to support our young people, and that's the business that we're in.
So obviously, a very hard concept for people really to stay with that are teachers. I've been a teacher. I started off by saying three things. Sit down, keep your mouth shut, and raise your hand. Okay? And I ran a classroom like that for a couple of years. Then I realized something was missing. And of course, then I became superintendent after going up the ladder. And it really hit me, I guess, a couple of years ago again, that we're not going to take the New Haven Public Schools anywhere, to my principals, unless we get these kids engaged. We're not going to improve the dropout rate unless we begin to engage these kids. And we've got a grant from the Nella May Foundation, who's actually working with 5 of my schools to really try to get teachers to do some personalized learning with kids, to actually have kids as the focus and not the teacher as the focus. And 2 of the schools are doing quite well with it. The other 3, they're struggling. They're struggling with the teachers to change the way that they do business. And I find that when teachers do change, they have a tendency of going back if you don't keep that PD in their faces day in and day out. I mean, there's certain things that we know in education works. We know it, and we do it for a while, we let it go, we come right back to it, we give it another name. But certainly, you got to get kids engaged if you want to teach them and keep them at school. The other thing we're doing is we're working with a group called the Futures Project. And this is a small group, started out of Yale. Tim Shriver, one of the part of the Kennedy family, it's his son that went to Yale and decided he wanted to do something to try to engage kids. And he started this program called the Futures Project. And he started at one school in New Haven, Washington, D.C., and New York. And they're going to use New Haven as a model now and see what they can do across the entire district. So we have about 5 schools involved in a project where they look at young people, high school, and ask, what is your real dream? What would you really like to do? And they try to steer kids around something that some probably would never be. Would you like to be a rapper? Would you like to be a singer? I would like to be a singer just one time. But anyway, and they find out what interests that kid. And after school, they meet with those kids. They have tutors and mentors from Yale that come in and work with those kids on whatever their dream may be. And then at the end of the year, they put on a grand finale for the community, which they're going to do Sunday. These 5 schools are going to get together, and so we'll be there jumping and helping with them and so forth. That to me is a good thing, and hopefully some of those skills will transfer over. I know one thing, the attendance of all of those kids have what? It's gone up. It's better because they come to school just to participate in that, and hopefully they'll pick up some learning during the school day while they're there.
Christine, if I could add one more thing to this one question that we've all been answering. I also think that in addition to all the things that everyone has said already, one of the things that helps with student engagement is not only the way things are taught, but what is being taught and what is expected of students. And, I think I don't want to, maybe I do want it to sound like a steady drumbeat, but, when people think about implementing new standards like the Common Core standards in our schools, throughout the grades in our schools, I think all people really think about is higher standards, more difficult work. But you're going to hear in a panel shortly about how this is really about building skills of articulation among students. It's about helping students to problem solve. It's about helping students to get involved in their learning, and teaching in a way when students can get involved in their learning and give feedback about their learning and be engaged in the process. And so I think, all of these things work together to provide teachers and principals the right tools and resources to create environments where students are agents of change in their own learning. If we could do for learning what we did for smoking, most children in schools will tell you smoking is bad for your health. They will tell their parents smoking is bad for their health. They will tell anyone who will listen or won't listen, smoking is bad for your health. If we could get them to understand the same things about their own learning process and what they need and be able to articulate that respectfully, I think we would completely change the environment in our schools.
Any last questions?
It's refreshing to hear that education is being looked at in the context of the whole child. And I think it's very important when we talk about kids to look at the way that communities are interconnected and really looking at a safety net in regard to parents and the school system and in the community in regard to CBOs and other corporations. But one of the things that I wanted to ask, I think in Hartford, Boys and Girls Clubs of Hartford is one of the lead agencies for community schools, and I know that the concept of community school works because you have that connectedness within the community and the school system. But one of the questions that I wanted to ask, we've also had an opportunity through the Hartford Public Schools where they offer training for CBOs to kind of align themselves with the education standards and really learn how we can support those educational needs. But is there a systematic approach in any of the districts or the environments that you work in where the reverse happens, where the youth development practices or the 40 developmental assets and all of those kind of things that are kind of the after-school approach or the youth development approach is in reverse taught to teachers in a systematic approach so that the concept and the way that we come at children in regard to teaching and learning is a little bit different and kind of mirror some of the needs or the ways that it's done in the after-school setting.
In Kalamazoo, we are involved with an organization called, it's not Community Schools, it's Communities in Schools. It's a national organization, and there's a site coordinator at all of our schools that works with the teachers and the principals because we believe the teachers and the principals know most about what the youth need. So each of the site coordinators is heavily trained in youth development and brings the youth development research into the school, into discussions with the teachers and the principals about how they're doing their work. And in turn, the teachers and the principals give to the Communities in Schools coordinator the needs of the child and the expanded school day till 6:30 p.m. So we have a continuum there, and there's some wonderful partnerships because of that. We believe that through the Learning Network, our learning is reciprocal, and that all adults have assets and all youth have assets, and that we can learn from each other.
Coalition for Community Schools helps bring together networks that are doing just that. So Multnomah County, which is Portland, Oregon, and Tulsa, and a number of other districts have actually adopted this kind of partnership as a strategy. We do not do formal training back and forth, but we do formally make it a part of our approach to do collaborative design and implementation. So there are always teachers involved in the out-of-school time program design and implementation, and vice versa. Because the curriculum is focused on problem solving, we have the youth development folks working together. So we haven't figured out the training piece in our Philadelphia work, but by making all aspects, it's not just trading, it's not trading off. You do school day, we do after school. By making the entire process collaborative, I think we try to bring all those voices together.
Well, I'd just like to wrap the session up by giving each of the panelists about 30 seconds to address this great room of Hartford community leaders and share with them your bit of advice. We've got national and regional and local folks here. What would you like to tell Hartford community organizations and leaders? What's your advice for them as they go forward? Rayanne, you want to start?
Sure. So I guess I would just make one short statement, and that is that I get concerned when the conversation is about reform versus non-reform and whether or not we should support changes in our schools. And I think if everyone could just remember that reform is really about every young person learning to read, learning to be analytical and have the skills that they need to graduate and go on and pursue a meaningful career or job in order to sustain their families and not have to stay in poverty. That's what this is about. So have patience with your leadership, speak up, participate, be a part of the change process, and things will move a lot faster.
The work that's being done here is impressive, and I look forward to learning more about it and learning with and from you. And thank you very much for the invitation. And we found that this work has to be a commitment for the long term, and it seems that Hartford community is well on the way to doing that, and that these partnerships can be mutually beneficial, mutually respectful, democratic, and collaborative. And you can do 3 out of 4 of these at any given time, but it's clear that when we try to put them all together, we're going to have a lasting impact.
I'm very excited and pleased to see that the Hartford Public Schools is really engaged in the fundamentals of the reform that is necessary for all students to succeed. I think it's fabulous. I have been at this for 40 years and been involved in education reform as a superintendent for a number of years, and I've come to learn that no matter what education does or what educators do, this investment in youth and their success will not be accomplished without the help of key organizations in the community. This is community work. It has to do with healthcare. It has to do with housing. It has to do with government. It has to do with poverty. It has to do with all the variables that are described in some of the great work that Hartford has done. They can't be the only ones to work the hardest. It takes all of us and all of the institutions, and I believe that there is strong proof that in terms of, quote, education reform, that the only thing we haven't done to its fullest extent is engage our community in this cultural shift we're after. So this could be one of the answers, and I'm thrilled to be part of it.
So let me just say, Christina, thanks again for the invitation. Obviously, we're supposed to impart knowledge, but I steal things everywhere I go. I'm gonna have a conference, folks. I'm gonna have a conference in New Haven, all right? I'm gonna have one there. Thank you.
He's such a tough act to follow, isn't he? I too want to thank Christina and everyone who participated today. I think this is all really important work and important messaging to reinforce. And while normally I would be talking about some of the nuts and bolts that my earlier speakers did, I also want to make sure we don't forget about the heart in this. I think it is so important to raise our expectations, to believe that we can do this. It has to be together. Change doesn't happen, and positive change doesn't happen in a vacuum. But I think we really have to expect from one another and from the students and the families that we can do better and keep that vision intact as we move forward.
Final word.
My final word for this panel would certainly be that the momentum we have is unbelievable, and it is great momentum because of the willingness to keep coming to the table and saying, what do we need to do next? What do we need to do next for our students? And I think there's an untapped component here that I hope that we can go to next, and that is there's a reason why I invited Reggie Mayo to come and to a forum that's really largely a discussion about Hartford, and that is that New Haven, Hartford, Bridgeport, Waterbury getting together and having one voice in terms of state policy agenda. It's going to make us absolutely unstoppable in terms of the momentum to really be student focused. And I think that is something that we need to do next in the state of Connecticut.
Great. Well, join me in thanking this great panel.